we're very, very lucky and humbled to have an esteemed friend of mine in Graham Mitchell. Welcome today, Graham. How are you, buddy? You well?
I'm good, thanks. I'm good. How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad, not too bad. So Graham is a business psychologist. He owns a business called T2I, which is top 2 inches. I've known him for about 5 years now, and always very, very enlightened by his insight, and actually really, really quite cool to have you here today and talk about the effects of COVID-19 and Corona on organisations, but more importantly, in a great way to kind of assist leaders and how they're dealing with this. So without further ado, in terms of Corona, it's just unprecedented, unchallenging times. It's quite crazy. What was the OMG moment for you that made you realise that it was here to stay and was going to be a real issue for organisations?
Well, thanks, Nick. I mean, if I'm honest with you, I think we also have an OMG moment every day at the moment. It's absolutely crazy, and that probably gives an indication of just the size of what we're all facing. But I suppose the first one for me was the middle of March, and I actually was in a meeting in Amsterdam to talk to a client I was going to be doing some delivery with during April, and I think we spent the last half hour of a 3-hour meeting just maybe putting together some contingency plans in case things came through. And said that we'd take a call at the end of March as to whether we went face to face, which was the intention, or we maybe looked at more remote and virtual options. And that was going to be a 3-week lead to there. I flew home that day thinking we'd still do it. By the 24 hours later, there was absolutely no chance anybody was going anywhere, and it was all going to be virtual. And it was just, for me, that was the first time I thought this is huge, and the impacts are going to be quite huge as well. So as I say, it's probably OMG every day at the moment, but that was the first one for me when I thought we're in the middle of something here.
It's really interesting, actually, because everyone's got a different story, but it's all about the same time.
Yeah.
Because until there was a government, obviously, recommendation for everybody to kind of work from home if you could, but it wasn't until the lockdown that everything pretty much ceased trading or ceased contact or ceased anything really. So okay, excellent. And in terms of, you work with a wide range of organisations across a number of sectors. What have you seen everybody do to kind of create some level of business continuity or deal with the impact of this?
Well, I think there's people doing. I think they're doing a couple of things. I think the first thing that they're trying to do is just sort of assess and evaluate what's going on. So they're trying to understand. I think firstly, they're trying to look after their own people. There's a sort of an operational response to this in a way. Thinking, okay, how do we make sure that we can still conduct our business in a way? Obviously, if you look at it internally, how are we going to still be able to do what we can do day to day? I think there's a cultural response to this as well, which is also then, how can we do it in a way that's going to keep our people safe? So you immediately see the working from home where that's relevant. Obviously, certain organisations and industries will need to take more stringent measures because that's relevant to them, and they're very much more front line. So I think that that sort of operational and cultural response has been 2 elements. I think there has been a bit of a psychological response from firms thinking about looking after the well-being of their people as well. And where they're starting to get to, but it's tricky, is that commercial response. And I think at the moment, that's not quite where all industries are. I think at the moment, it's still quite industry facing, and they're still in that assess and evaluate phase. And what's this going to mean to us, in the hope that at some point they can go on and think, okay, fine, commercially, what does this mean to our clients and how we can then deliver into them? But I don't know if they're there yet. I think it's still the more internal response at the moment, and that makes sense in a way. And then we can start to try and move forward when we're at a time where there's enough certainty for us to do so.
Good call. And in terms of, are there any sectors or any people you're dealing with at the moment or working with that are not affected by it or able to trade through it or being able to support some of the essential services?
I don't know about trade through it. I think there are those obviously that are that are still busy. But I look at I do quite a bit in the legal sector, and obviously they're still needing to, in certain areas they're still needing to support what's going on. We're having to come up with an awful lot of agreements and make things happen pretty quickly. So I think they're still busy making sense of that, and also making sense of new legislation that comes in. But on the whole, I don't think there's anybody at the moment who's not he's not been really dramatically affected by this, and he's still very much in that assess, evaluate, and make sense stage, and then trying to move forward.
Okay, and before we talk a little bit about the business as unusual, which is one of your unique takes on the situation. In terms of a lot of people that I'm talking to at the moment are looking for a support network, and that's obviously one of the reasons why we created IsoNation. They're not looking for a support network that initially to kind of get people through business. They're looking for a support network financially. What are your thoughts on what's been offered to not just to SME across the UK from a government perspective?
I think it's. I think it's huge, isn't it? I mean, if you look at the sheer scale of it to start with, we went from a budget that offered, correct me if the figures are wrong, but a budget that offered sort of £30 billion worth of measures to that being increased tenfold within a relatively short space of time. And if we're talking about OMG moments, maybe that was another one in a way when you see that. And I think what they've tried to do, and maybe this is the prioritization order, is what they've tried to do is relieve that conflict between everyone's well-being, physical well-being, and financial well-being in a way, and try and give people the space to not work or work from home if that's what was needed in a way. So I think they've got it right there. I have a certain amount of sympathy for them because the one word that comes out all the time is it's unprecedented, and it is.
Indeed.
So there's a lot of people having to create stuff as we go, and it's fairly complex. So I think on the whole, a lot of it's landed in the right place, but this is going to affect different people in different ways, and it's going to challenge people in different ways and to different degrees. And so it is going to impact some people adversely, and it's going to put a lot of good businesses under pressure, more so than relative to others. So I don't think you can cover every base, but I think the measures so far, you can certainly see what they're trying to achieve. I think, but like most of this, we need to keep reviewing as we go along. And if we're missing things out, or we're not supporting everybody as much as we could do, we need to recognise that, we need to acknowledge that, and we need to do what we can around that.
I think that's a really good response, and I think depending on, this is not a political debate whatsoever, but what's been really enlightening is the fact that there's been a level of creativity and flexibility from the government. Governments wherever you are across the world are renowned for a level of flexibility, especially within those time frames. You have to wait for things to get passed and the bills to get passed and things to go through the usual mechanics, but they have been really flexible around self-employed workers and those guys being remunerated in the right way. And the fact that a lot of these sweeping support mechanisms financially are not just for businesses, they're actually for everybody, because they're for businesses and for leaders of businesses and owners of business, but they're also for employees as well. And from that perspective, you've got to applaud them. We don't know what the ramifications are going to be longer term, because it's going to be a gaping hole somewhere in the balance sheet for the government. But actually, let's get through this, and the more they can do to kind of prop organisations up and trade through the treacle, the less they're going to have to do, longer term afterwards. So good, and it kind of leads me on quite nicely from a support perspective. We talked about, we've got business owners and we've got employees. What I really liked, you saw my post a couple of weeks ago about business as usual, and the reason I did that post, business as usual, was there was two things really, but three things. One, I wanted to kind of convince myself that it was business as usual. Excuse me. Two, I wanted to kind of convince my clients that, listen, Baxter Williams was still here and it's business as usual. And three, I wanted to kind of help motivate my troops and make sure that it was business as usual. And I think until we had the lockdown, it was very much business as usual, because we were able to use some video tech. But as soon as lockdown came in, nobody was using the term business as usual. People were using the terms unprecedented, challenging times, and more importantly, it was more around business as unusual. So tell me a little bit about that initiative that you've created there, because I like it. Tell me a little bit more about it.
Yeah, I mean, it was just I was like you always. I'm always really pleased when you log in and you see a real kind of support network of people just putting ideas out there, saying, look, I don't know, we're all going through the same challenges at the moment, and I don't know if this will help, but it helped me, so I'm going to put it out there. And that's always really heartening. And for me, it was just thinking, well, how can I kind of contribute to that debate or that information flow? And it's as much, I suppose, from the psychology side of things, but also some experience. I'm showing my age, but I was also involved in guiding an organisation through the 2008 scenario in a way. And I've always tried to make sure that when you go through things, whether it's day to day or big seismic things, try and learn from them, and try and take away the lessons of what you did well, and what you could have done better last time round. So I just sort of put some thought into what might be some useful tips and tactics, and I kind of agreed with you. I think it's a wonderful mindset to have this sort of business as usual. How do we keep doing what we're doing? But that actually, if we think about how we deliver that business as usual, we're going to have to start doing it in some fairly unusual ways. And that turnaround, who would have thought that business as usual for McLaren would be fixing ventilators? But what a wonderful use of their expertise. So we're going to have to start to do things in some fairly unusual ways, and that's going to be quite challenging. And it was just thinking around, well, when we're in a state of challenge, it can impact our mindset, and the body the mind can make us go in different ways and make us. It's trying to protect us, but it actually doesn't always. It's not always our best friend. Really putting through some tips and say, look, just bear these in mind in a way that we are in challenging times, and so it can impact us in certain ways. So just keep these in mind as you're navigating things, whether it's personally or if you're somebody who's responsible for people, either as a manager or a business leader, etc. This might just be of use. So it was just some tips, five top tips that I sort of put out there that just might make that connection between how we conduct business as usual and then what's a fairly unusual world at the moment in time.
Indeed, and I'm going to we'll go through those points in a bit more detail, but I'd like to come back to 2008. 2008 was the last big crash. I started my first business in 2010. From the shoots of that, and it's always a really nice opportunity within the economy post recession. But let's forget about post Corona. Let's worry about what we're in now, and there'll be some uncertainty amongst a lot of business owners and business leaders because they wouldn't have been through this before. There would have been some people who would have been in established organizations and businesses that would have learned from those lessons. And obviously the first thing everyone's doing now is looking after cash. They're keeping liquidity, and cash management is key, and the speed to which you do that as well is probably key. In terms of 2008, we're in 2020. This is different. This is a different kettle of fish. However, the theory is exactly the same in terms of how do we keep leaders, their well-being and their sanity and their mindset in the right place. So without further ado, the first thing, the first of your 5 points was never lose sight of your vision or your mission. So elaborate on that for us, Graham, if you could, please.
Well, this came through as much from a psychology perspective and a motivation perspective as it did from a personal experience perspective. And back in 2008, I think one of the things I'd like to think we did pretty well as an organisation was we stuck true to our values. So the way in which we tried to guide our people through what we were going through, I think the values was a big guiding principle for us in how we did that. Where I wonder, looking back on it, if we maybe just lost our way a little bit, was just keeping an eye on the vision of the business. And actually, we were going through some tough times, but it wasn't wrong to still have ambition. It wasn't wrong to still have an eye on what you were all about as a business, and where you were going to go at some point. And that actually the reason you were trying to navigate what you were doing now is to get back to that at some point. But things had taken an unexpected turn. The path had gone a different way, and it was going to take longer and perhaps a trickier or harder route to get there. But don't lose sight of that. And so that's my first piece of advice. It's just at the moment we're all trying to make sense of what is going on, and it's still evolving. So that's a day-to-day challenge in a way. And it can seem a bit counterintuitive to think you're absolutely right. There's a lot of day-to-day things that we need to get in place and need to do it in short order. But always keep one eye on what that longer term ambition for your business is, and you as an individual, and what you're all about as a business, because it'll do a couple of things. One, it'll help you to make sense of how you do that. So if we want to come, how do we come through this so that we can then go on and achieve what we want to achieve? And we're still all about what we're all about as a business. But what does that look like right now? It's the same kind of mission, but it looks about something different. So I think it's key because it keeps your motivation going. That's the why. That's why we're trying to battle day to day to get these things done, because at some point we'll go on and realize our ambitions. So don't lose sight of what they are. But also I think a key thing as well is that we want to keep thriving to whatever degree we can do, rather than just survive these things. And by understanding what we're still trying to achieve as a business and what we're all about, it just gives a bit more meaning to those day-to-day activities that we're doing. We're still achieving stuff. We're still accomplishing stuff. And that's a real source of motivation, not just for people leading business, but for those people in it in a way. Now, they might be contributing in very different ways to how they thought they were going to be even 3 weeks ago. But as long as you feel like actually in some way I'm trying to help my people or my business get through this, that's a real source of motivation to come back and do it again tomorrow in a way, and to keep heading towards what we're trying to. So the point one for me was just keep that one eye on what you're trying to do, what you're trying to be as an organization and what those ambitions are, as well as taking care of the day-to-day, because they put them all in context. They give you the why you're doing the day-to-day rather than just look at what's happening at your feet. So that was just piece of advice number one. But that was, as I say, that's as much from experience as psychology.
And you know what, in terms of vision and mission, because I agree with you, like yourself, I speak with a number of different sectors across a number of verticals nationally. And what a lot of people are having to do is being a bit more agile.
Yeah,
but they're not. They're reorganizing their business. It's not process redesign. It's just about that level of agility, because we know what we're trying to do. We just have to do it slightly different.
Yeah.
We just have to do it slightly differently. And I think from a contribution perspective, yes, listen, your end game is to generate some revenue. Your end game is to deliver a service or to deliver a product.
Yeah.
But if you're not able to deliver a service or a product, if you can do some of the elements in the supply chain that get you to do there, so once we are through this, you can still deliver them. People are still feeling like they're as you say, contributing and adding some value.
And I think there's also the element of if you can't directly contribute to what you're trying to do now, what's going to make you a better business when you come out the other side? So what can I do now that actually is going to help when that recovery comes, that's going to help us recover quicker or recover better, or make us a broader and stabler business in a way. So there's a bit of an investment time as well, potentially. But yeah, I think that's it. It's all about what do we want to achieve and what can we do now that's going to help us do that, whether that's what we're doing day to day or that investment for the longer term as well. And it just, as well as that source of motivation, it just helps us make sense of what's going on in light of our ambitions.
I like it. I like that. And then your other point was, instead of focusing on things you can't do, focus on things you can do.
Yeah,
Talk to us a little bit about that.
It's just the way the brain works. Sometimes when we're under pressure, we'll go in on negative, and these are challenging times. I deny anybody to sort of say otherwise. These are challenging times. So there is, and we are operating under restrictions. In lots and lots of ways, we're operating under restrictions, whether that's to, where we can move at the moment in time or from a commercial perspective. And that can make us focus a little bit more on what we've lost rather than what we've still got. Mm-hmm. And off the back of that, we can feel, oh, well, there's nothing we can do, so we don't do anything. And lo and behold, we will fulfill our own prophecy in a way, and we sort of, productivity drops off. And because our instinct's going to take us there, we almost have to consciously bring a better balance to that and say, well, actually, okay, I can't necessarily do everything I'm used to do. But if I look at what were the major objectives we were trying to achieve? What are the kind of supporting tasks that drive those objectives? It's amazing when you walk through your days and your weeks, you can see a lot of it's still there. I can still do a lot of that. Yeah, fine. There's, I can't necessarily do it in the same way that I used to, but I can still do a lot of that. And it's important to just recognize what's still out there, so that we don't drop into that habit of thinking, well, there's nothing that I can do, so I won't do anything. But as well as focusing, I think, on what you can do and the challenges of overcoming that, it's also the opportunities about what you can do now, because obviously for a lot of us, there's a bit more time on our hands. So what does that give us an opportunity to do? Other people have more time on their hands. So what does it give us an opportunity to maybe do with them in terms of conversations we'd like to have, ideas we can sort of build with them, etc. And also what we're finding is people's thoughts, their attitudes around a lot of things they've changed. They're a lot looser than they were. So maybe overnight. Yeah, overnight. So maybe some ideas that we were trying to push at before and there wasn't much of an appetite for, or maybe a not now answer to it. Maybe now's not a bad time to just start to engage with some of those ideas again. So it's really just making sure that we don't fall into that trap of focusing too much on what we can't do anymore. And there are things that we're no longer able to do as businesses, as individuals, but really keep sight of what we can do and actually what we can do now. So there's an ability to still do the business as usual, but also an opportunity to do some additional stuff as well.
I agree 100%. My guys were in that exactly the same boat. You know, they were like, we can't recruit, we can't do any recruitment. You know, and they define themselves as really, you know, because they're really passionate, credible operators, and they define themselves by being able to fill 2 roles a week or 3 roles a month. And what I've told them to do at the moment, and I tell you what we've really found, is there've been some really meaningful conversation with people. People have had to plan, people have to change their plan. People are really into the detail on what they want to do as a business or what the future looks like. And as a result, people are really open to collaborate, to talk about benchmarking. There's some, and normally you don't get to speak to people. They've got PA that is a bit of a gatekeeper. You know, you'll get through 1 in 5 times. Now they're able to talk. They're at home. They haven't got a 3-hour commute. They're all back. And so what we're finding at the moment, even though we're not able to recruit, and we're finding a lot of other industries, they're not able to sell or they're not able to provide a service. What they are able to do is to really build stronger, more meaningful relationships and have those conversations they would normally have had.
And that's so key, because if there was another thing I would draw out from 2008 as well, it's that there came a point in the recovery where you know, people didn't stop doing everything. They didn't stop transacting business, full stop. But when they did get back to business as usual, they were a lot more thought through about how much they spent and where they spent it, but also who they spent it with. The key thing, the business who did well in that regard were those who had good relationships. You know, they were actually therefore trying to find out, well, what are you trying to achieve now? How's this impacted you? How can I help you? And build those relationships and look at that longer term in a way. And you really saw that in the landscape afterwards. Those businesses who built those relationships, both before and during, were the ones that then did well coming out of it, because that's what people were focused on. They were focused on, as I say, you were just careful around who you did your business with and how much it cost. We were still being careful, but we did business all the same. And that really helped people help each other to build back out of you know, what was a pretty sizable dip then.
And an extension of that, I don't know whether you saw this in 2008, cash is tight for everyone. So there's a big knock-on effect from everybody saying, listen, well, can you work with me? Can we have payment holidays? Can we keep some of the cash in the business? And then obviously pass it on to someone else in the supply chain. I think the depth of those conversations and also the humanness of those conversations, if that is a word, it's really, people have been laid bare, they've been raw, and they're literally just been having really open, honest conversations, not hiding behind anything, just saying, well, this is the situation. What do you think that's going to do in terms of galvanizing those relationships moving forward?
Well, I think you can see it in many walks of life, can't you? Everybody's focused on a common goal. It's really, in that sense, it's really unique. We all have a common goal. We're all going through this, and it's just an opportunity to put the BS to one side, isn't it? You know, we're all. You know, we all want to paint a good picture of how our businesses are going, but we all know how things are at the moment. And there's a real comfort for all of us when someone else is saying, "Yeah, I'm experiencing that." It doesn't help us in terms of stepping up in that sense, but actually we understand that it's not. You know, I'm not experiencing it because I'm at my business. I'm experiencing it because of wider world impacts in a way. And I think it just brings us home to us. And maybe this is a slight difference from telling it that no one's made any mistakes here. You know, no, from a business point of view, no one's made any mistakes here. No one's managed badly. This is a real kind of the biggest ever left field thing that's sort of come to us. So again, you've got to knock that guilt to one side and start to focus on how do I move things forward. And I think when we come out the other side, and we will, I think that hopefully will create much more of a community spirit, because we'll all be building from a lower base. And I think it will be much easier if we all build from that base together, because we'll all have taken our hits in whatever shape and form. And it'll be better if we can build together. We'll get out of it quicker, we'll get out of it better, and hopefully move forward better.
I love that. And we talk about it. We haven't had any, so this will be our first sporting analogy. But you know, when you've been in the trenches, so to speak, from a sports perspective, when you've been through that, being either near relegation battle or getting a trounce in, or just being on the back of a bad losing run, there's a certain element of being in the trenches with people that galvanizes friendships and relationships and creates a bond unlike anything else. And so when you've got a better squad, or when you have that better run, or when you need to really pull it out, that collective, really, there's the synergies is incredible, and I'm hoping we can get that from the wider business community on the back of this as well.
I mean, you never wish it on anybody, but you know, adversity is really useful sometimes to show you what you're all about, what other people are all about. And as I say, you don't wish ill on anybody. I wish we were booming right now. But
Indeed,
it really is. And what's great is pretty much on the whole, if not exclusively, you hear nothing but good stories at the moment. And that's great, because in this time of adversity, that's what you're seeing coming through. And the key is to hang on to that, so that what we're all doing now to sort of, whilst we're in kind of a defense mode in a way, will really stand us in good stead as we start to move forward as well.
No, I agree. So point number 3, don't let perfection get in the way of a very good idea. Yeah. Talk to me about that one. What was the premise of that?
It builds on the last point in a way, which is, obviously the last one was, we might not be able to do everything that we used to do, but it doesn't mean we can't do anything. This one is, it's all around that creativity point, isn't it? We can sometimes get frustrated because we can't do things in the same way. So we can't have the face-to-face meetings. We can't necessarily go and visit the clients, etc. And again, it's that. So, well, if I can't, if I can't do it exactly how I'd used to, then I won't do it at all. And again, that's just going to impact us in a way it doesn't need to. And it's really just about doing what we're seeing at every turn, being creative, thinking about the formal processes, thinking about the informal processes. So whether it's the sort of weekly strategy meetings, or kind of the informal coffee catch-ups you used to have with your colleagues, whatever, if they were valuable to you or valuable to your business, let's find a workaround. Don't just dismiss it. Just think about what I can't do it 100%. What does an 80%? What does a 60% version of that look like? Or what does a virtual version of that look like? What does a halfway house version of that look like? And just be creative, so that we're still doing these things, because if we value them, it's really important that we we keep them in our kind of day-to-day program in a way. And there'll be a temptation to do nothing, but even the sort of halfway house option, doing something is always better than doing nothing at all. And it just keeps all those valuable elements in our day-to-day role.
It's we talked about it before, and we were latching onto what you just finished by saying there, is so video conferencing and working from home. And I won't talk about it too much because we talked about it in our last interview, but we talked about the changing landscape and the fact that people now, their mindsets have changed. And whereas I'd much rather meet you for a coffee or a beer and do this interview in a different way. But very nature of it. Yeah, we will. We'll definitely do both of those again. But VC's been a perfect example of that. And I think when I speak to organisations that have been through the recession of 2008, the organisations that stayed there were 2 reasons really why they survived. One, they had a product and service that had got some level of legacy and history and credence and high demand. Or 2, they were able to innovate. And that's what we're seeing that now. We're seeing examples of organisations innovate. In terms of VC, in terms of working from home, in terms of not current practice that you can't quite do, but you can still do, you can't do face-to-face. Are you seeing any other elements of innovation that are happening in your sphere, any of the people that you're working with at the moment?
I don't know. I must admit, I think this is one of the areas where people are. I mean, we're seeing innovation all over the place, aren't we? I suppose is the most obvious one. We were talking a moment ago about you're seeing McLaren making ventilators. You're seeing these wonderful. You're seeing schools now on a production line. For the PPE for the NHS. So you're seeing innovation all over the place, and I think this is.
Sorry to interrupt. There's a regional one. I'm not sure if it's happened anywhere near. Anywhere you've got a distillery. So 2 of our Tyrrells who make the gin and Piston Gin in Worcester, they're making hand sanitizer for the NHS. Yeah. So who'd have thought? Who'd have thought of that?
Yeah, and it is, and that's why we're seeing this creativity, and that's why I say, so much of it's instinctive and intuitive. People think, "What can I do? What can I do?" And I would really, keep doing that. But I think where this might hit home more is maybe in that well-being in a way, which is actually when we're looking at those individual, the social interactions that we have and the physical activity that we can or can't take, and all that is be creative there. If we can't do, because I think looking after ourselves is key as well, as we'll probably talk about later on. But I think maybe we've got to make sure that as well as being creative and inventive as businesses and organizations, we've got to be creative and inventive as individuals in terms of how we keep ourselves ticking over as well. But I think you do, because I think necessity is the mother of invention, isn't it? We're having all doing this, so we're finding a way there. What's lovely is that people are sharing the ideas. They're saying, look, we're trying this, give it a go, and people are grabbing it. There's no there's no intellectual property around this.
There's no And so we talk about it a little bit as in one of the good things that will come from this, and we'll talk about it now because obviously you mentioned it, the collaboration piece. Yeah. We started IsoNation as a collective, as at times of adversity, unity is what's required, and I talked about it in the first interview around being typically stoic and British and having that spirit. The one thing you don't normally see is that kind of collaboration, that kind of openness. People are really quite guarded around the business and around someone stealing the idea or capitalizing on the R&D you've done. Obviously, there's some high-level stuff you'd want to keep close to your chest. But in terms of general innovation, I think there's been a hell of a lot more collaboration and sharing of best practice.
I think, but you look at teams, and the one thing you always say around any team, but you want to galvanize a team, give them a common goal. Give them a common goal, give them a common challenge. And that team at the moment, it's not even, it's not even UK, it's global. We are all focused on a common goal. And funnily enough, I think somebody was saying recently, are we getting a bit too national in what we're doing? Not just the UK, but are a lot of countries looking at this as the UK or as France or as the US or as whoever, rather than actually looking at it as a global team as well. And that is, I think, why you're seeing this, because we're not competing here. We are all on the same side. And we've got this kind of common goal or common enemy, depending on how you want to do it. And that's why you'll see collaboration come through, in bucket loads in a way, because that's the key thing in galvanizing most teams is give us a common goal and we'll and it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant.
Long may continue, Graham. Long may continue. So we'll talk. The last 2 points really were all about managing emotions and expectations and leaders. So in terms of you manage your emotional expectations, talk to us a little about that, because that'll be really relevant for leaders as they're dealing with some of the stress of Corona.
It's mostly a leadership point, but I think it's probably true of anybody who's got responsibilities for other people. So it could be from a family perspective, a managerial, even a peer-to-peer colleague perspective. We all look out for those people around us. And I did a session recently, and the sort of intro to it was, people talk me through the emotions that either you've experienced or encountered, and then you ask them to score them. And you've got such a range of emotions, some really positive ones. You get the optimism, you get the resilience, you get the can-do spirit, you get the collaboration, it all comes through. But then you get some really strong ones at the other end. You get the anxiety, you get the frustration, you get a bit of despondency, loss of control, etc. But what it shows you is it's a really emotive time right now. Some really, really strong and quite polar opposite emotions coming through, and that can be quite challenging as well. And I think it can sometimes, when we're in that sort of environment, we put unfair expectations on ourselves, and from a leadership perspective, we do put unfair expectations in terms of, I should know certain things, I should have all the answers, I shouldn't be feeling anxious myself. If I should be strong for my people, surely I don't feel anxiety, I shouldn't feel frustration, I should know all those answers. And we can spend a lot of time beating ourselves up that we're not perfect, and we don't know these, and I'm letting my people down in that regard. And we can waste time and we can waste energy on that, and it's not true. I mean, I think I deny anybody, it's the right to feel any of those emotions at the moment. I mean, we talk about unprecedented. Nothing breeds anxiety as much as ambiguity. And we don't know what's going on at this moment. We don't know where this is all going to go. There's a lot of uncertainty out there. So unsurprisingly, people feel uncertain or they feel anxious. So don't beat yourself up about carrying that round. A lot of the time, it's just really a good, strong indication that you care what happens and you care about the people around you and you care about doing what you can do to make it right. But, take it as a positive and don't waste the energy beating yourself up thinking, oh my God, I'm not being a good leader. Take that energy and just focus it on solving the problems that you can,
refocus,
whatever you can, and we can't, we can all contribute that kind of 160 million to the big problem, can't we, by just observing what we're being asked to do. What we can do is maybe solve some of the small problems that fall in behind it, or smaller problems that fall in behind it. So I think that's the thing. It was just, don't place an unfair expectation on yourself that you should know everything or you shouldn't be feeling, a whole range of emotions at the moment. Take that energy and focus it in on doing the stuff you can do in terms of trying to build the way forward for your people.
Love it. And it's easier said than done as a business leader. We're both owner managers. we take so much flack. We like taking the flack, and obviously both having a sporting background, it's not an issue. People, the thing with things, you're a machine, you can do it. It's different. This is different because actually, it's not quantifiable. There aren't the factors out there that you can normally control, and if you don't control them, you know that you've not failed, but you haven't done what you're supposed to, and that's why business is tough right now. And actually, all those things have gone. This stuff's all out of our control. And the biggest thing around, don't give anything any meaning unless nothing has meaning unless you give it meaning. Stuff that's that. The biggest thing, Duncan Hall, one of the best rugby coaches I ever had, always said to me, listen, control the controllables. And this is one thing that's out of your control. If it's out of your control, why waste the mental energy on it? Move and as you say, refocus that energy elsewhere, which ties me quite nicely to the last point of your take care of yourself. An extension of obviously not taking things, managing your emotional expectations. In terms of the next step, take care of yourself. Well-being is a big thing. It's been a big thing on the cards over the last 2 years, really prevalent, and it's been great that we've had mental health in the workplace at the forefront of conversations, no longer being swept under the carpet. In terms of take yourself, what would be your take on that within the work environment?
Well, I think it is absolutely key, and I'm like you. I've really loved the fact that well-being has been right up there on so many workplace agendas over the last few years, and been taken really seriously. So and probably never been more key than it is now. And we talked before about the fact that this is unprecedented and uncertain times in a way, but if there's absolutely one certainty that we can hang on to, is that no matter what challenges we face, whether it's individually or collectively over the weeks, months, and however long this goes on to have its impact for, the better headspace you're in, the better your state of well-being, the better prepared we're all going to be to deal with these things. And when I'm working with people, and you're sort of talking about challenges, you tend to look at 3 areas very broadly. You'll sort of say, okay, can you manage the source of the challenge you're facing? Can you look at removing it, or can you look at how you might minimize its impact, or whatever? And we're all hopefully doing our bit in whatever way we can to remove that source in a way. Can you manage your response to it? And again, we talk about what we do as citizens, but also as businesses, thinking about your mindset and the actions that you take, etc. But the key one in the middle is, can you manage yourself, take care of yourself, and take care of the people around you. So it's absolutely key about thinking about all the stuff that comes out around well-being. And as I say, maybe this is where we need to be creative. We're thinking about how we connect with those around us, how we kind of take notice of the good stuff that's still happening, the positives that are coming out of this. Keep learning, and I think this is a key one in a way. Keep challenging ourselves. Having that sense of achievement. It might not be in the direction, but if there's a skill that you felt you'd ever thought, I need to learn this, I need to get on top of this at the moment, and it'll help me be better to my business afterwards, or be a better business afterwards. Maybe now's your time to do that. So you feel like you're maybe not accomplishing what you thought you were going to accomplish today or wanted to, but you're accomplishing all the same.
Indeed.
Give to other people. I don't think there's any shortage of that at the moment. I think there's plenty of that going on, and that's brilliant. And then be active. Not all. We don't all need to be kind of Tour de France winners or marathon runners, etc. Whatever works for you, whatever activity you do that you feel you find kind of re-energizes you, try and find a way to still do it, and make sure you're just having those quick questions with the people around you, and say, you're all right. Is everything okay? Because we're all going to go through highs and lows. And so I think maintain your own well-being. Looking at those people around you, understanding we're going to be challenged. It's challenging times, so we're going to be challenged. And what's my coping mechanism for when I feel frustrated, when I feel angry? We're going to feel these things. I feel a bit low. How do I deal with that? How do I help my people to deal with that? What can I learn from them in terms of how I deal with that? Take some inspiration elsewhere. And it's really just making sure that we all keep ourselves in a good place and keep those around us in a good place, because as I say, no matter what we have to face as a result of that, we'll just be better placed to do it in a way. So that's my best till last, maybe.
and it's, well, you know what, and you're right saying it's your best till last, because without staff making sure that they're looked after and their well-being is at the forefront of everyone's mindset, there is no business. So and when I spoke with Christian, I said, the one thing that will come out of it is that actually people will recognize that their most important resource is their people. And you've got to keep, and people being paid isn't that's not well-being. Well-being is making sure that they are in the right headspace, that they're in the right physical space, and they're suitably engaged. So thank you for those. And I think business as unusual is a really unique take on it. And it's not just putting on a business as usual, just putting on a PR slant. It's business is unusual, but we're still loads of positives. We got to recognise it's not the norm. We got to recognise that we're in a state of flux, but we can still take the positives. So thank you for sharing that insight with us. In terms of closing and concluding this conversation, in terms what the $1 million question I'm going to ask everybody at the end of the interviews is, how long do you think we're going to see the effects of this, and when do you think we're going to get back to some normality?
I'll probably take those in a reverse order, if that's all right. I mean, again, if I look back on 2008, we didn't get back to how things were beforehand, so it didn't return to that. And I don't think that we will. I don't think there'll come a point from a business perspective in a commercial world where we will be back where we were before. And I think we'll see things in the landscape that we recognise, and there'll be things that we think, well, that's new. And that'll be processes, and that'll, some of these things will be great and create opportunity around them, but it will be different. So I think we'll get back to a new normal rather than a normal, if you know what I mean, in terms of we'll spot changes, and hopefully the ones that we hang on to will be the really good ones in the way that we have found new ways to do things and better ways to do things, and more ecologically sound ways to do things, and more cost-effective ways to do things. So I don't know if we will get back to the old normal. It'll be the new normal. At the moment, for what it's worth, from my perspective and what I'm hearing from businesses around us, I think it's too soon to say exactly when that will be. Because at the moment, I do still think we're in that. I still think it's all evolving. I think the implications of all this are still evolving, and I do think that businesses and organisations as a whole, in the right way, are still just looking at their own operations and how we make sense of all this before they then completely re-engage with the market and think, well, actually, how do we now provide our service to those clients, and what do those clients need? And I think at the moment, everybody's just kind of organising themselves, and it won't be until we get some degree of certainty around the world that we've got at least one part of solid ground to put a foot on, that we can start forward, and we'll get more of a sense of timing in terms of when we'll come through this.
Okay, so you weren't committing there, and rightly so too. I think it's still early doors, but as we talked about the OMG moments happening every day, as soon as we get some line of sight of when lockdown's going to stop, I think the picture will be a lot clearer in terms of making that prediction. I think that's probably the. Yeah, and I think
it comes back to what we talked about earlier on. You hear in the news, don't you, about this constant balance between the physical well-being of the country and the economic well-being of the country, and I think we'd all probably know which one of those has got to take priority. But let's make sure that the other ones, we're keeping one eye on the other one as well, because at some stage that will then become important as well. But until we get one sorted, I think it's very difficult to get visibility around the other.
Awesome. Yeah, I agree. And in terms of the last question I'm going to ask you is, because I'm a big fan from a mindful perspective. I'm a big fan of finding the gift in everything. And what good will come out of, and it's good that comes out of every negative situation, what good will come out of the COVID-19 corona situation longer term? Graham?
What good will come out of it? Hopefully a lot. I mean, I like to think that the lasting impact will be one of two things, and it quite broad is that I think it will create opportunity, because it will have made us look at things in very different ways, and it will have forced us to do things in very different ways. And so coming out of it, there'll be a lot of opportunity there to take advantage of that. But at the other end of the spectrum, I think it's also will have brought home to us what we really value. The little things that we really value, and I mean that on a personal perspective and a work perspective. So yes, we will be able to be more agile in the way that we work, but we'll also really appreciate the culture and the colleagues that we work with, and the interaction we have with them. And that's just probably one example of two ends of a spectrum about where there'll be real creativity and opportunity at one end, but it will have really brought home to us the things that we really value at the other. And if we can hang on to those two things and take advantage of one and hang on to the other as we move forward, my hope is that that's just one of the many positives that will we'll come out of it. We just need to kind of get through this initial phase so we can start to work towards those, with some degree of certainty.
And that's a really nice way to finish. And I think out of every bad situation, if you can get some legacy, if there's a shining light, if there's some innovation about the way we interact or do business or we conduct ourselves, then it's not, it's not going to be all in vain, because this was totally out of our control. And we're making the best of a very bad situation, and hopefully the insight you've given us today will resonate with some people. It'll give some people some inspiration. It'll be relevant to those, and hopefully it'll be some stuff that they'll be able to put into action. So with that, I want to say a big, massive thank you to you, Graham.
Pleasure.
I really appreciate your insight, and I look forward to catching up. Hopefully we're going to try and get you involved in another part of IsoNation. But what's that space with Glee? Is there anything you'd like to say to close off, buddy?
Oh, just the obvious to people, really, which is kind of stay safe. Stay safe to people. I mean, I think we everybody on the whole is doing what they can do to combat this and to get us through it as quickly as possible and as healthily as possible. So just anybody who comes across this, I just wish you well over the weeks and months ahead, and let's keep doing that.
And I'll reiterate those sentiments as well. Thank you very much, Graham. We'll catch up very soon. Buddy.
Take care.